What would you do if you discovered your own grandchild was stealing your prescription medication and potentially risking their life with dangerous drug abuse? Well, let me tell you what I did when I caught Tyler in the act, and how I turned a family crisis into a chance for healing and redemption. My name is Betty, and at 74 years old, I thought I understood the full spectrum of family betrayal. I had survived children who tried to steal my house, relatives who attempted to have me declared incompetent, and in-laws who viewed me as an embarrassment to be hidden away. But nothing had prepared me for the moment when I would discover that the grandchild I loved most in this world was slowly killing himself with pills stolen from my medicine cabinet. It started with small things that I almost dismissed as signs of my own aging mind. My arthritis medication seemed to run out faster than it should have. The prescription bottles felt lighter when I picked them up. The pain relief that usually lasted 6 hours was barely helping for 3. Maybe I'm taking more than I remember, I told myself, trying to rationalize the discrepancies that were becoming harder to ignore. Maybe the pharmacy made a mistake with the count. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. In 74 years of life, I had learned to trust my instincts, and my instincts were screaming that someone was stealing from me. The question wasn't whether pills were disappearing. The question was who was taking them and why. The answer came on a Tuesday night in March, when insomnia drove me downstairs to make chamomile tea at 2 a.m. As I passed the hall bathroom, I heard the unmistakable sound of someone rifling through my medicine cabinet, trying to be quiet but failing miserably. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart breaking as I recognized the silhouette in my bathroom doorway. Tyler, my daughter Sarah's 16-year-old son, was holding one of my prescription bottles up to the nightlight, shaking it gently to count the contents. Tyler, who had been staying with me for the past month, while his parents worked through their latest marital crisis. Tyler, who I had welcomed into my home with open arms and an open heart. Tyler, who called me his favorite person in the world, and claimed that staying with Grandma Betty was the only thing keeping him sane while his family fell apart around him. Tyler, who was stealing medication from the woman who loved him most, and was risking his life in ways he couldn't possibly understand. I watched from the shadows as he carefully opened the bottle, poured several pills into his palm, and then replaced the cap with the practiced movements of someone who had done this many times before. He wasn't fumbling or uncertain. This was routine. This had been happening for weeks, maybe months. As Tyler crept back toward the guest room, I remained hidden in the hallway, my mind racing through the implications of what I had just witnessed. My grandson wasn't just experimenting with drugs. He was systematically stealing prescription medication from his elderly grandmother and putting both of us at risk. Me, because I wasn't getting the pain relief I needed for my arthritis and other conditions. Him, because he was taking medication that wasn't prescribed for his body, his age, or his medical needs. But the most devastating realization was that Tyler's theft explained so much more than just missing pills. His behavior over the past month suddenly made horrible sense. The mood swings I had attributed to teenage angst, the excessive sleeping that I had blamed on depression about his parents' marriage, the moments of confusion and disorientation that I had dismissed as normal adolescent distraction. Tyler wasn't just stealing my medication, he was abusing it, and the combination of drugs he was taking could kill him. I spent the rest of that sleepless night sitting in my kitchen, trying to decide what to do with information that could destroy my family. Do I confront Tyler directly and risk him running away, or escalating his drug use? Do I call his parents, who were barely managing their own crisis and might not be able to handle this additional catastrophe? Do I contact authorities and potentially criminalize a child who was clearly struggling with problems bigger than he could handle? By sunrise, I had made a decision that would change everything for Tyler, for his parents, and for our entire family. But first, I needed to understand exactly how serious this situation was and how long it had been going on. What I discovered over the next few days would shock me more than the original theft and force me to confront the possibility that the grandson I thought I knew was actually a stranger living in my house, taking my medication, and lying to my face every single day. Over the next 3 days, I became a detective in my own home, carefully documenting Tyler's behavior and systematically checking my medication supplies to understand the full scope of what he had been stealing. What I discovered was far worse than I had initially feared. The missing pills weren't random. Tyler was specifically targeting my most powerful medications. My prescription oxycodone for severe arthritis pain was nearly gone, though I had filled it just a week earlier. My Ativan, prescribed for occasional anxiety attacks, had been reduced to less than half the original count. Most alarming, my Ambien sleeping pills had disappeared almost entirely, leaving me with only 3 tablets from a 30-day supply I had picked up 10 days ago. Tyler wasn't just experimenting with drug abuse, he was systematically stealing a combination of medications that could easily kill him if he took too many or mixed them with alcohol or other substances. But the pills were only part of the story. As I watched Tyler more carefully, I began to notice behavioral patterns that terrified me. He would disappear to his room for hours at a time, claiming he was doing homework, but emerging confused and disoriented. His appetite had virtually disappeared, and when I did see him eat, he would often become nauseous shortly afterward. His sleep schedule was chaotic. Sometimes he would sleep for 14 hours straight, other times he would be awake all night, pacing restlessly through the house. Most disturbing were the moments when Tyler seemed completely disconnected from reality. On Wednesday morning, I found him standing in my kitchen at 6 a.m., fully dressed, but staring blankly at the wall as if he had forgotten why he was there. "Tyler, honey, are you all right?" I asked gently. He turned to look at me with eyes that seemed to take several seconds to focus. "Grandma Betty, what time is it?" "It's 6 in the morning, sweetheart. Are you getting ready for school?" Tyler blinked slowly, like someone trying to remember where they were. "School? Is it Tuesday?" "It's Wednesday, Tyler. Are you feeling okay?" "I'm fine," he said quickly, the automatic response of someone who was definitely not fine. "Just tired. I stayed up late studying." But I could see the panic in his eyes as he tried to orient himself to time and place. This wasn't normal teenage sleepiness. This was someone whose brain chemistry had been disrupted by drugs he didn't understand and couldn't safely manage. The most heartbreaking moment came on Thursday evening when I found Tyler crying quietly in the guest room, curled up on the bed like a small child. "Tyler, what's wrong?" I asked, sitting on the edge of the bed and gently stroking his hair the way I had when he was little. "I don't feel good, Grandma," he whispered. "I feel scared all the time, but I don't know why. Everything seems wrong, but I can't figure out what's wrong with it." "Sweetheart, when did you start feeling this way?" "I don't know, maybe a few weeks ago. Maybe longer. I can't really remember. Everything feels fuzzy, like I'm looking at the world through a dirty window." Tyler was describing the cognitive effects of prescription drug abuse, but he clearly didn't understand what was happening to him or why. In his mind, he was just feeling inexplicably anxious, depressed, and confused. He had no idea that the pills he was stealing from me were causing his symptoms and potentially putting him in life-threatening danger. "Tyler," I said carefully, "have you been taking anything that might make you feel this way? Any medication or supplements?" His body went rigid, and I could see him calculating what I might know and how much he could safely lie. "No, Grandma, I don't take anything except vitamins sometimes." The lie broke my heart, but it also confirmed what I already knew. Tyler was too deep into this crisis to ask for help voluntarily. He was scared, confused, and probably physically dependent on medications that weren't prescribed for him. Worse, he was lying to the one person in his life who would move heaven and earth to help him if he would just tell the truth. That night, I made a decision that would terrify Tyler, shock his parents, and potentially save his life. But first, I needed to document everything I had observed and prepare for the most difficult conversation of my life as a grandmother. Because loving someone sometimes means being willing to break their heart in order to save their life. And Tyler's life was definitely in danger, whether he understood it or not. But what I discovered when I finally confronted him about the theft would reveal that Tyler's drug abuse was just the tip of an iceberg that included family secrets, academic pressure, and emotional trauma that no 16-year-old should have to handle alone. Friday morning brought the moment I had been dreading and planning for all week. I woke up early, prepared Tyler's favorite breakfast, and waited for him to come downstairs so we could have the conversation that would either save his life or push him away from me forever. Tyler appeared in my kitchen at 8:30 a.m., moving slowly and looking like someone recovering from a severe illness. His skin was pale, his hands were shaking slightly, and his eyes had the unfocused quality I had learned to associate with his medication abuse. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said as normally as possible. "I made your favorite pancakes." Tyler managed a weak smile and sat down at my kitchen table, but I noticed he only picked at the food without really eating it. "Tyler," I said gently, "we need to talk about something important." His body language immediately became defensive, shoulders hunching and eyes avoiding mine. "What about?" I reached into my purse and pulled out the documentation I had been keeping for the past week. Photos of my nearly empty pill bottles, a written log of Tyler's behavioral changes, and medical information about the dangers of prescription drug abuse that I had printed from reliable websites. "Tyler, I know you've been taking my medication." The color drained from his already pale face, and for a moment I thought he might faint or run from the room. Instead, he went completely still, like a small animal caught in headlights. "I don't know what you mean, Grandma." "Sweetheart, I saw you in my bathroom on Tuesday night. I've been tracking my medications all week, and I know exactly what's been missing. More importantly, I've been watching you suffer from the effects of taking drugs that aren't prescribed for your body." Tyler's composure cracked, and I could see him struggling between the instinct to keep lying and the desperate need to confess to someone who might be able to help him. "Grandma, His voice broke, and tears started streaming down his face. "I didn't mean for it to get this bad. Tyler, honey, tell me how it started. Help me understand what's been happening." The story that poured out of my grandson over the next hour was more heartbreaking than I could have imagined. It wasn't just teenage rebellion or casual experimentation. It was a 16-year-old boy trying to medicate himself through family trauma, academic pressure, and emotional pain that he didn't know how to process. It started a few months ago, when Mom and Dad started fighting all the time. Tyler said through his tears. They would scream at each other every night, and then they would come to me and complain about each other like I was supposed to choose sides. "And that made you feel anxious?" "Anxious, angry, scared. Like everything was falling apart and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I couldn't sleep because they were always yelling. I couldn't concentrate at school because I was always thinking about whether they would be divorced when I got home." Tyler explained that he had initially taken one of my Ativan pills during a particularly bad panic attack, just to see if it would help him calm down enough to sleep. "It worked so well, Grandma. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The anxiety just went away, and I could actually sleep for more than 2 hours at a time." "So you took more?" "Just occasionally at first. Maybe one pill when things got really bad at home. But then the fighting got worse, and school got more stressful, and I started taking them more often." The pattern Tyler described was textbook prescription drug abuse, starting with legitimate emotional distress, finding temporary relief through medication, and gradually increasing frequency and dosage as tolerance built and problems remained unresolved. "Tyler, what about the pain medication? The oxycodone?" "That started because the Ativan made me feel numb, but not good. The oxycodone made everything feel better, like nothing could hurt me anymore. Like all the problems were still there, but they didn't matter." "And the sleeping pills?" Tyler's face flushed with shame. "I started taking those when the other stuff stopped working as well. Sometimes I would take Ambien with Ativan just to make everything stop for a while." My blood ran cold as I realized Tyler had been mixing medications that could easily cause respiratory depression, especially in someone his age and weight. He could have accidentally killed himself trying to escape problems that seemed insurmountable to a 16-year-old mind. "Tyler, do you understand how dangerous it is to mix those medications?" "I know they're strong, but I thought if they were safe enough for you to take, they couldn't be that dangerous for me." "Sweetheart, those medications are prescribed for my specific medical conditions, in doses calculated for my age and weight. Taking them without medical supervision, especially in combination, could have killed you." Tyler stared at me with wide eyes as the reality of what he had been doing finally sank in. "Grandma, I didn't know. I just wanted everything to stop hurting for a while." "Tyler, I understand why you started taking them. But honey, we need to get you help right now. This isn't something you can handle alone, and it's not something I can fix with love and good intentions." "Are you going to tell my parents?" "Tyler, your parents need to know what's been happening. But more importantly, you need medical attention to make sure these drugs haven't damaged your body, and you need professional help to deal with the emotional problems that led you to start using them." Tyler began crying harder, the kind of desperate sobs that come from someone who has been carrying an impossible burden alone. "Grandma, what if they hate me? What if they think I'm just another problem they have to deal with, when they're already barely handling their own problems?" "Tyler, your parents love you more than their own lives. They might be shocked, they might be scared, but they will never hate you for struggling with problems that are bigger than you are." But as I held my grandson while he cried, I realized that Tyler's drug abuse was just one part of a much larger family crisis that would require all of us to confront some very uncomfortable truths about how we had been failing this child long before he started stealing pills from my medicine cabinet. That afternoon, I made the phone call that would shatter my daughter Sarah's world and force her to confront the consequences of choices she had been avoiding for months. "Sarah, I need you and Mark to come to my house immediately. We have a family emergency that can't wait." "Mom, is everything okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, but Tyler is not." "Sarah, how quickly can you get here?" The urgency in my voice must have conveyed the seriousness of the situation, because Sarah and Mark arrived within 30 minutes, both looking terrified about what they might find. Tyler was sitting in my living room when his parents walked in, having spent the past hour alternating between panic attacks and resignation as we waited for the conversation that would change everything. "Tyler, are you okay?" Sarah asked immediately, rushing to her son's side with the instinct of a mother who sensed danger. "Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something," Tyler said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. What followed was one of the most painful conversations I have ever witnessed as a mother and grandmother. Tyler confessed his drug abuse to parents who were completely unprepared for the revelation that their family crisis had driven their child to steal prescription medication and risk his life trying to cope with problems that were destroying all of them. Sarah's first reaction was shock that quickly transformed into guilt-ridden horror. "Tyler, how long has this been going on?" "A few months. Maybe since January." "January?" Mark said, his face going pale. "That's when we started, when the fighting got really bad." "You knew about this?" Sarah accused, turning on her husband with the anger of someone looking for someone else to blame. "I didn't know about the drugs," Mark replied defensively. "But I knew Tyler was struggling. I tried to talk to you about getting him counseling, but you said he just needed time to adjust." "Don't you dare try to make this my fault," Sarah snapped. "You're the one who started staying out all night. You're the one who—" "Stop," Tyler said quietly, but with an authority that surprised all of us. "Just stop. This isn't about whose fault it is. This is about me stealing Grandma's medication and almost killing myself because I couldn't handle watching you destroy each other." The room fell silent as Tyler's words sank in. Here was a 16-year-old boy taking responsibility for his own choices while simultaneously calling out the adults in his life for creating the crisis that had driven him to those choices. "Tyler," I said gently, "tell your parents what you told me about how the drug abuse started." Tyler repeated his story about the anxiety, the sleeplessness, the desperate need to escape the constant conflict that had made his home feel like a war zone. "I didn't know how to make you stop fighting," he told his parents. "I didn't know how to choose sides when you both wanted me to hate the other one. I didn't know how to act normal at school when I was going home to World War III every night." Sarah began crying as she realized how her marital problems had affected her son. "Tyler, we never wanted you to choose sides. We never meant for our problems to become your problems. But they did become my problems, Mom. When you complain to me about Dad, that becomes my problem. When Dad tells me he's thinking about leaving, that becomes my problem. When you fight so loudly that I can't sleep, that becomes my problem." Mark sat down heavily in the nearest chair, looking like someone who had just realized the full cost of his family's dysfunction. "Tyler, why didn't you tell us how much this was affecting you?" "Because you were both so angry all the time that I was afraid to add more problems. I thought if I could just handle it myself, maybe you could focus on fixing whatever was wrong between you." The conversation that followed revealed layers of family dysfunction that went far beyond Tyler's drug abuse. Sarah and Mark had been so focused on their own marital crisis that they had completely failed to notice their son was struggling with problems that were literally life-threatening. But as painful as these revelations were, they also created an opportunity for healing that wouldn't have existed if Tyler's drug abuse hadn't forced everything into the open. "Tyler," I said, "your parents need to know what happens next. Tell them what we discussed about getting you help." Tyler took a deep breath and looked directly at his parents. "I need to go to rehab. I'm probably addicted to the pills I've been taking, and I need professional help to get clean and learn how to deal with my problems without drugs." "Rehab?" Sarah asked, as if the word was foreign to her. "Tyler, you're only 16. Mom, I've been stealing prescription drugs and mixing them in combinations that could have killed me. Age doesn't make that less serious." Mark cleared his throat. "What kind of rehab? How long? Where do we even start?" I handed them a folder of information I had prepared while Tyler and I waited for them to arrive. I've researched adolescent addiction treatment programs in our area. Tyler needs medical detox to make sure his body can safely process the withdrawal from these medications. And then he needs therapy to address the emotional issues that led him to start using drugs in the first place. But if Tyler goes to rehab, Sarah said slowly, everyone will know. His school, his friends, the whole community. Sarah, I said firmly, your son's life is more important than your family's reputation. Tyler needs help, and he needs it now. The conversation ended with a commitment to get Tyler into treatment as soon as possible, but it also included an acknowledgement that Tyler's drug abuse was a symptom of family problems that would require all of them to make significant changes. As Sarah and Mark left to begin researching treatment options, Tyler stayed behind to help me secure my remaining medications and to begin the process of honest communication that should have started months earlier. "Grandma," Tyler said as we locked my prescription bottles in a safe, "I'm sorry for stealing from you. I'm sorry for lying to you. And I'm sorry for making you worry about me when you should be enjoying your retirement instead of dealing with family crises." Tyler, loving someone means worrying about them when they're in trouble. It means fighting for them when they can't fight for themselves. And it means being willing to break their heart temporarily in order to save their life permanently. Are you disappointed in me? I'm disappointed in the choices you made, but I'm proud of you for being brave enough to ask for help when you realized those choices were destroying you. But the most important conversation was yet to come, because Tyler's recovery would depend not just on professional treatment, but on his family's ability to address the dysfunction that had created the crisis in the first place. 2 days later, I received a phone call that would expand Tyler's individual crisis into a family-wide intervention that was long overdue. "Mom, it's Sarah. We found a treatment program for Tyler, but they want to meet with the whole family before they'll admit him. They say addiction is usually a family disease, not just an individual problem."
What does that mean?
It means Tyler's counselor wants to evaluate all of us to understand the family dynamics that contributed to his drug abuse. "Mom, they want to know if you're willing to participate in family therapy sessions." Family therapy sessions. The idea terrified me almost as much as it intrigued me. At 74 years old, was I prepared to sit in a room with professional counselors and examine my role in a family crisis that had driven my grandson to steal medication and risk his life? The answer, I realized, was yes. If Tyler was brave enough to face his addiction and ask for help, I could be brave enough to examine whatever family patterns had contributed to his crisis. The first family therapy session was scheduled for Thursday morning at Serenity Springs, an adolescent treatment center that specialized in prescription drug abuse. Tyler had already been there for 3 days undergoing medical detox, and this would be my first chance to see him since he had been admitted. Walking into that treatment center was one of the most humbling experiences of my life. The waiting room was filled with other families whose children were struggling with addiction, and I saw in their faces the same mixture of love, fear, guilt, and determination that I felt in my own heart. Tyler looked better than he had in weeks when he joined us in the counselor's office. His skin had regained some color, his hands were steady, and most importantly, his eyes were clear and focused in a way they hadn't been during his final days at my house. "Hi, Grandma," he said, giving me a hug that felt like the Tyler I remembered from before the drugs changed him. "Thank you for saving my life." The family therapy session was facilitated by Dr. Martinez, a counselor who specialized in adolescent addiction and family dynamics. She began by asking each of us to describe our understanding of how Tyler's drug abuse had developed. Sarah spoke first, her voice shaking as she admitted her role in creating the family stress that had triggered Tyler's initial anxiety. "Mark and I have been having marriage problems for over a year. We've been fighting constantly, and we've been using Tyler as a confidant and ally instead of protecting him from our problems." Mark nodded, his voice equally unsteady. "I've been staying away from home to avoid conflict, but that left Tyler alone with Sarah's stress and anger. I abandoned my son when he needed stability most." When it was my turn to speak, I found myself confronting my own contribution to the family dysfunction. I knew Sarah and Mark were having problems, and I knew Tyler was struggling, but I didn't intervene because I thought it wasn't my place to get involved in their marriage. I let Tyler suffer in silence, because I was trying to respect boundaries that shouldn't have existed when a child's welfare was at stake. Dr. Martinez listened to our confessions and then asked the question that would define Tyler's recovery and our family's future. What needs to change in your family system to support Tyler's sobriety and prevent future crises? The answer required all of us to commit to changes that would be difficult but necessary. Sarah and Mark agreed to enter marriage counseling to address their relationship problems without involving Tyler. They committed to creating a stable home environment where Tyler could focus on his recovery instead of managing his parents' emotional needs. I agreed to be more actively involved in Tyler's life, providing a stable refuge when his parents' relationship created stress, and serving as an advocate for his needs when other adults in his life were too distracted by their own problems to prioritize his welfare. But the most important commitment came from Tyler himself. I promised to tell the truth about how I'm feeling, instead of trying to handle everything myself. I promised to ask for help when I need it instead of stealing pills and lying to people who love me. Dr. Martinez smiled as she watched our family begin to function as a team instead of a collection of individuals managing separate crises. Tyler, your drug abuse was a symptom of family problems that were bigger than any 16-year-old should have to handle alone. But your recovery can be the catalyst that helps your entire family become stronger and healthier. The session ended with a treatment plan that included individual therapy for Tyler, marriage counseling for his parents, and family therapy sessions that would continue for as long as necessary to maintain the changes we were all committing to make. As we left Serenity Springs that day, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not just hope that Tyler would recover from his addiction, but hope that our family could emerge from this crisis stronger than we had been before. But the real test would come when Tyler completed his treatment program and returned home to face the daily challenges of maintaining sobriety in the same environment that had triggered his drug abuse in the first place. 6 weeks later, Tyler completed his residential treatment program and returned home to a family that was fundamentally different from the one he had left. The changes weren't just cosmetic, they represented a complete transformation in how we communicated, supported each other, and prioritized Tyler's well-being. Sarah and Mark had made remarkable progress in marriage counseling, learning to address their conflicts privately instead of involving Tyler in their relationship drama. More importantly, they had developed strategies for supporting Tyler's recovery that didn't require him to choose between his parents or manage their emotional needs. Tyler, Sarah told him on his first day home, your father and I want you to know that our marriage problems are our responsibility to solve. We will never again ask you to be our therapist, mediator, or ally in our conflicts. And if we ever start falling back into old patterns, Mark added, we want you to tell us immediately. Your recovery is more important than our comfort or our pride. I had also made changes in my own approach to family relationships. Instead of staying on the sidelines and hoping problems would resolve themselves, I had become an active advocate for Tyler's needs and a source of stability when other family relationships became stressful. Tyler, I told him during our first private conversation after his return, I want you to know that this house will always be a safe place for you. If your parents start fighting again, if you feel tempted to use drugs, if you need someone to talk to at any hour of the day or night, you call me immediately. But the most significant changes were in Tyler himself. The scared, confused, drug-dependent boy who had been stealing pills from my medicine cabinet had been replaced by a young man who understood his addiction, had tools for managing stress and anxiety, and was committed to maintaining his sobriety. Grandma, Tyler said as we sat in my kitchen, sharing the first of what would become our weekly check-in conversations. I want to apologize again for stealing your medication. But more than that, I want to thank you for saving my life. Tyler, you saved your own life by being brave enough to ask for help when you realized you were in trouble. But you're the one who caught me, documented everything, and forced the family to face what was really happening. If you hadn't intervened, I probably would have kept using until I accidentally overdosed. Tyler's recovery wasn't easy or immediate. There were difficult days when he struggled with cravings, moments when family stress triggered his anxiety, and times when he had to actively choose sobriety over the temporary escape that drugs had provided. But he was no longer facing these challenges alone. He had weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez, daily check-ins with his parents, and a standing invitation to call me whenever he needed support or simply wanted to talk to someone who understood his journey. 3 months after Tyler's return home, I received a phone call that proved how much our family had changed. Grandma Betty, it's Tyler. I need to talk to you about something. My heart jumped, fearing that he was calling to confess a relapse or ask for help managing a crisis. What's wrong, sweetheart? Nothing's wrong, but I'm feeling stressed about finals week, and I can feel myself starting to think about pills again. Can I come stay with you for a few days until the urge passes? Of course, Tyler. I'll have your room ready in an hour. The fact that Tyler called me instead of acting on his cravings represented a fundamental shift in how our family dealt with problems. Instead of suffering in silence, Tyler had asked for help. Instead of trying to manage his stress with stolen medication, he had reached out to the support system that was now available to him. That weekend, as Tyler studied for his finals at my kitchen table while I prepared his favorite meals, I reflected on how this crisis had ultimately strengthened our family bonds. "Grandma," Tyler said during a study break, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think I'll ever be able to take prescription medication safely again? Like if I need surgery or something, will I be able to handle having access to pain pills?" "Tyler, that's a question you'll need to discuss with your doctors and your counselor. But I think the fact that you're thinking about it seriously instead of assuming you can handle anything shows how much you've learned about your addiction. I never want to go back to feeling the way I felt when I was using, scared all the time, lying to everyone, not knowing what was real and what was the drugs messing with my brain." "Tyler, recovery is a daily choice. Some days will be easier than others, but as long as you keep asking for help when you need it, you'll have the support you need to make good choices." 1 year later, Tyler was thriving in school, maintaining his sobriety, and serving as a peer counselor for other teenagers struggling with prescription drug abuse. His parents had successfully addressed their marriage problems and created a stable home environment that supported Tyler's continued recovery. Most importantly, our family had learned that love sometimes requires difficult conversations, that addiction is a family disease requiring family solutions, and that crisis can become an opportunity for growth when everyone is willing to take responsibility for their role in creating problems and their commitment to creating solutions. The medication scandal that had almost destroyed Tyler became the catalyst for healing that made our entire family stronger. Tyler learned that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. His parents learned that protecting children requires more than good intentions. It requires active attention to their emotional needs and the family dynamics that affect their young. And I learned that being a grandmother means more than providing love and cookies. Sometimes it means being willing to break someone's heart temporarily in order to save their life permanently. And that, my dear listeners, is how I turned a family crisis into a chance for healing and redemption. Sometimes the people we love most need us to be stronger than our fear of confrontation, braver than our desire to avoid conflict, and more committed to their well-being than our comfort with pretending problems don't exist. Tyler's addiction could have killed him, but instead it taught our entire family about the difference between enabling and supporting, between avoiding problems and solving them, and between loving someone and actually helping them. Never ignore warning signs that someone you love is struggling, even if addressing those problems requires difficult conversations. Never assume that keeping family secrets is more important than getting family help. And never underestimate the power of one person's courage to transform an entire family's future. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let someone you care about destroy themselves in silence. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give a family is forcing everyone to face the truth about problems that are too big for any one person to handle alone. I have more stories about the strength that comes from facing family crises, honestly, the importance of professional help for problems beyond our expertise, and the healing that becomes possible when people choose recovery over avoidance. So subscribe to Betty's True Stories, because the best families are not the ones without problems. They're the ones that face their problems together and come out stronger on the other side.